Welcome to today's Explainer. Right now we're diving into an incredibly powerful historical event, one that perfectly defines unparalleled resilience, deep, deep sorrow, and ultimately, an extraordinary legacy of mercy. We're going to walk through the historical source material detailing the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him, journey to the city of Taif. So let's jump straight into this, because this is a story that literally shaped history. And honestly, grasping its emotional depth is absolutely crucial to understanding the lessons it left behind for all of us.
To truly grasp just how heavy this event is, we've got to look at a very famous narration from Sahih Bukhari. Hazrat Aisha asked the Prophet a really poignant question. She asked, was there a day harder than the Battle of Uhud? Now, Uhud was famously a day of immense physical and emotional loss, but the Prophet's response, that's what brings us here today. He actually revealed that the absolute hardest day of his entire life was the day of Aqaba, which refers to the day he presented himself to the leaders of Taif. So to understand why that day was so agonizing, we really need to look at the context.
Section 1. The Year of Sorrow.
Okay, so we're in the 10th year of prophethood. The Muslim community had just barely survived a brutal 3-year boycott in the valley of Abu Talib, and suddenly a new mountain of grief hits. First, the Prophet lost his beloved wife and greatest supporter, Hazrat Khadija. Then just a few months later, his protective uncle, Abu Talib, also passed away. And without his uncle's tribal protection, the hostility from the Meccans dramatically escalated. I mean, they were relentless. It felt like every single door in Mecca was completely closed to his message. It was this exact sequence of devastating back-to-back losses that directly led to the difficult decision to head to Taif. And that brings us to the journey itself. The historical sources note that the Prophet, accompanied by only his incredibly loyal freedman and companion Zayd bin Haritha, took on this arduous journey to Taif entirely on foot. We're talking about a long, grueling trek through rough, mountainous terrain, and he went with a singular, hopeful goal. He was seeking refuge. He really hoped the Thaqif tribe over in Taif would embrace the truth of his message, or, at the very absolute least, just offer him some protection from the intense persecution back in Mecca.
Section 2. Rejection by Thaqif's Chieftains.
So they finally arrive in Taif, and the Prophet meets with 3 brothers who are basically the top chieftains of the Thaqif tribe. And the source material documents their response, and it is just heartbreakingly cruel. They didn't just politely decline his message. They actively mocked him. One guy blatantly insulted him, asking if God literally couldn't find anyone else to be a prophet. Another chieftain arrogantly dismissed him with this line: "If you are truly a messenger, rejecting you is dangerous. If a liar, speaking to you is beneath me." It was just a stunning display of sheer arrogance and hostility.
Seeing that their hearts were completely closed off, the Prophet made one final, highly restrained request. He just asked them, if you reject my message, at least keep this meeting a secret. Why? Because he wanted to prevent the Meccans from finding out that he had gone looking for outside help and gotten rejected. He knew that would only embolden them to ramp up their attacks against him even more. But incredibly, the chieftains refused him even this simple basic courtesy.
Which unfortunately leads us into Section 3, the brutal stoning incident. This cruel refusal escalated into something far, far worse. The chieftains didn't just tell him to leave, they actually incited the city's youth and hooligans against him. The mob formed these long lines on both sides of his path, relentlessly throwing stones as he walked. But amid all that cruelty, we see this incredible contrast: the fierce loyalty of Zayd bin Haritha. Zayd bravely acted as a literal human shield, throwing himself in front of the Prophet to take the blows, suffering severe head wounds in the process, just to protect his beloved messenger.
The physical toll of this mob violence was just unimaginable. The historical texts describe how the Prophet's body was deeply wounded by this relentless barrage of stones. The sheer cruelty of the moment is perfectly captured in one tragic detail. His shoes literally filled and pooled with his own blood. Let's actually just pause for a second here. We really need to let the physical gravity and that profound emotional sorrow of this moment truly sink in.
Section 4. Refuge and Addas's conversion.
Okay, so, exhausted and bleeding, the Prophet finally found a bit of temporary sanctuary just outside the city, in an orchard. It belonged to 2 Meccan leaders, Utbah and Shaiba. Seeing his state, they felt this fleeting moment of pity and sent their Christian slave, Addas, over with a plate of grapes. When Addas offered them, the Prophet reached out and simply said, Bismillah, in the name of Allah. Now Addas, who was originally from Nineveh, was shocked. He immediately recognized that people in this region did not speak like that. This sparked a quick conversation where the Prophet revealed his knowledge of Prophet Yunus, who was also from Nineveh.
When Addas asked how he could possibly know about Yunus, the prophet replied, "He is my brother. He was a prophet and I am a prophet." That profound, transcendent connection over a shared prophetic lineage instantly struck Addas. Recognizing the divine truth in the prophet's words and his whole demeanor, Addas was completely overwhelmed with emotion. He immediately kissed the prophet's hands and wounded feet and embraced Islam right there, right in the middle of that orchard.
Section 5. The famous Ta'if supplication.
Picture this. He's sitting there alone, injured, and deeply aggrieved. The prophet turns his gaze up to the sky, and he utters what is now historically known as the Dua of Ta'if. He says, "O Allah, to you alone I complain of my weakness, my lack of means, and my insignificance before people. You are the Lord of the weak, and you are my Lord." He went on to pray, stating that as long as Allah was not angry with him, he didn't care about the trials he faced. These majestic words of immense vulnerability and absolute reliance have comforted oppressed people for centuries ever since.
Well, the historical sources tell us that this profound supplication literally shook the heavens, and the response was immediate. Allah sent the angel Jibreel right alongside the angel of the mountains. They descended to offer divine retribution. Think about that. The angels were standing by, ready to execute absolute definitive justice on the people of Taif for their unimaginable cruelty. And here's the absolute turning point of the whole story. First, we have the angels' offer to take the two massive mountains surrounding Mecca, known as Akshabain, and just crush the city of Taif between them. Total, complete destruction. But on the flip side, we see the prophet's choice. Despite his bleeding wounds and his deep sorrow, he explicitly refused revenge. Instead, he chose to forgive them, famously stating his hope that even if they rejected him, maybe their descendants might one day worship Allah alone. This single moment is exactly why he is revered historically as a mercy to all the worlds.
Section 6. A legacy of mercy.
Because, you see, this source material isn't just recounting an old history lesson. It's providing a massive framework for our own resilience. These lessons from Ta'if are directly applicable to the trials we face today. First, never despair, even during extreme hardship when literally all doors seem closed. Second, practice absolute reliance on a higher power, known as Tawakkul, trusting the process even when you feel incredibly weak. And third, and yeah, perhaps the most difficult one, choose patience and mercy over anger and retribution when you are wronged.
And guess what? The ultimate victory of this patience is a matter of historical record. Just a few short years later, the prophet's hopeful supplication was answered in full. The city of Taif, the very same place that had viciously stoned him and driven him out, transformed completely. The descendants of those exact oppressors embraced his message, and Taif became a steadfast fortress of Islam and monotheism. Mercy absolutely won in the end. So, that wraps up our explainer for today on this remarkable historical journey. But before you go, I want to turn it over to you. When you look back at all of this, what is your biggest lesson from the journey to Taif? We would genuinely love to read your thoughts, so please drop a comment below. And hey, if you want to keep exploring historical events and profound lessons just like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button for the Animated Quranic Tales channel. Thank you so much for learning with us today, and we'll catch you in the next explainer.